Let's get a word on the big stories of the day. Robert Taylor is back with us, the journalist and political commentator. Afternoon to you, Robert.
Hello, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. It's a big day, of course, for geopolitics. Mr. Starmer and Mr. Trump having a bit of a powwow in the Oval Office in just a bit. That will then result in going off, apparently, for a bit of a latte and an iced fancy. And then they'll give a press conference at about 7 o'clock where they'll answer the questions. What do we need to get from the Americans? What does Starmer need to achieve from Donald Trump?
Well, first of all, I think he has to establish some kind of working relationship. British prime ministers and American presidents have often had their big differences, but they've always managed to transcend that and develop some kind of working relationship. But it's really difficult with these two because they're not just chalk and cheese. If you look at it from their favourite foodstuffs, Ian, we've got Donald Trump's Big Mac against Starmer's curried salmon. They couldn't be more different in terms of philosophy, in terms of personality, in terms of political outlet. They're just very different. So first of all, a good working relationship. And then secondly, of course, some sort of agreement over what America is going to do with Ukraine.
Yeah.
I disagree with your caller just before the break who said it doesn't matter if Russia invades Ukraine. It doesn't matter even if they invade Finland and the Baltic states. I think it matters an awful lot, just as it mattered with Hitler in the 1930s. We have to take Putin very seriously.
Do you think Mr. Trump will show any favouritism to Keir Starmer? I mean, look, we can talk about whether the special relationship is real or just an imagined thing. Does every leader say it to every country they visit, whether it's the French visiting Germany or the Germans visiting Finland? You know, there's always this special this sort of diplomatic language. But we know Trump has got connections to the UK. His mother was British, connections to Liverpool as well. So, and, you know, he likes the royal family and stuff like that. I don't imagine a signed photograph of King Charles is going to cut it. But do you think he might read the room and think, you know what, I'm going to do this. And Starmer can walk out of this room waving his paper of victory and say, this is what I got from the president.
Well, you've always got that second state visit, the second Trump state visit to the UK, to dangle in front of Donald Trump and say, how about this? You know, you'd love to come and stay at Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle again, wouldn't you? So I think that's something we can offer him. And there's no doubt, as you say, Trump's, you know, he's got business interests in Scotland. He's got a golf course up there. He's very fond of Britain. Yeah, mother was Scottish. So, and we're out of the EU, though we know this week just how much Donald Trump loathes the EU. He even went as far yesterday, I think, as saying the EU was set up to screw America, which may be a little bit of an exaggeration, but says a lot about what Trump thinks about the EU. We're out of that. There may well be some way in which we can persuade Donald Trump to treat us a little bit differently when it comes, for example, to tariffs.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, isn't it? It's the tariff thing is now up and running, so he's lobbed a load onto the EU. They say they're going to robustly retaliate. There could be a knock-on effect for us, but we're not in that equation, as you rightly say. So, yeah, maybe it could be that. I can't imagine, you know, I think Donald Trump has kind of... He's sort of Donald Trump Mark II this time around, isn't he? Not just literally, because it's his second time in the White House, but he's upped his game. And that might not be everybody's idea of, you know, the right way of doing things, but he seems like a changed man from 2016.
Well, he's really hit the ground running. I mean, this blizzard of presidential decrees and decisions, and he's got his eye on Canada and Greenland. I mean, my goodness, you wake up every day and something new and different has happened. Of course, there's a Chagos deal as well, and it may well be, we don't know what's going to happen with Chagos, it may well be that Trump says, look, you know, get rid of Chagos, and that's another favour you can do for us in America. So there are one or two things. I think fundamentally, very different personalities, Starmer and Trump. They're not natural buddies at all, but there could be a meeting of minds and a meeting of interests that allows for some sort of compromise.
Well, we are going to watch with the popcorn a little later as they meet. Connected to Trump, this is Trump's deal that he's carving out with Ukraine. Starmer's there today, of course. Mr. Zelensky is there tomorrow. So it's a busy old day in the Oval. He'll be replacing the carpet by Sunday because it'll be worn out with the amount of presidential shoes and prime ministerial walks that have happened upon it. And this, of course, is all about the deal that Trump has kind of galvanised, apparently, with Ukraine for mineral rights. He's apparently come out with a $500 billion deal. You know, we now own your minerals. Now, a lot of people go, well, is that brilliance on Trump's part? You know, OK, we financed a lot of what's happened there. We've thrown a load of money your way to help you fight this war. We want something back. But a very real belief from some European countries that they've been sidelined and Trump's trousered all the booty.
Well, this is the deal maker, isn't it? This is Trump, the deal maker in action, doing and putting America first. That's what he was elected to do. And he can turn around to his electorate and say, well, look, you know, you may have thought Ukraine had nothing to do with us. I have some sympathy with that, says Donald Trump. But look, we're getting something big in return. We don't have to rely on China for all these valuable minerals any longer. We can get them from Ukraine because we'll have a special agreement with Ukraine. So you can see it from America's point of view. The good thing from Ukraine's point of view, I hope, is that there will be some sort of meaningful, what's called an American backstop, and a meaningful security guarantee. Because I think without America, any security provided by Europe isn't going to be strong enough to dissuade Putin from coming back for more of Ukraine when he's regrouped.
Indeed. Let's move to this story. This is all about the environment, really, Robert. There's a lot going on there. And by the way, I was talking to somebody yesterday who was telling me that wind, despite the Trump kind of line on net zero, which we all get and know what he's doing there, wind turbines and solar panels are a multi-billion-dollar industry in the United States. You know, it's the idea that the US is free of all of this stuff is not true. And, you know, there is an argument that Donald Trump, a man who can spot where there's money, in any other world will be the bloke that planted the wind farms.
You would, and apparently he doesn't like the fact, I don't know whether to believe this or not, but he doesn't like the fact that birds are killed from being
Yeah, there's a couple of speeches saying they do a number on those birds, a big number. Well, apparently they're going to be painted black, wind turbines now, to cut the number of bird deaths.
So I hear, and it seems like a relatively easy win. I mean, these wind turbines are enormous, of course, so no easy matter to start going into the North Sea and painting them all black. That's quite a job, and it's going to cost money. But again, if it pleases Donald Trump, it seems to me to be a relatively painless win. And if we could save a few thousand birds in the process here, well, that's got to be good, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, you'd think so, wouldn't you? I mean, you know, nobody wants to cull a seagull. Well, I don't know, no, scrap that. Seagulls we don't like, seagulls are bad. But, you know, eagles and those kind of beautiful birds of prey that we have around, I mean, these are glorious creatures. Death by windmill is not, you know, it's not a great way to go. It's not even a sexy story for the bird fraternity, is it? They can't say, heard about little Alf, the pigeon, you know, got cut up by a flipping windmill. There's nothing great about that. There's no story to tell. In a similar vein, talking of the environment, BP are scaling back on its renewable energy projects by 70%. In fact, they're investing $7.8 billion in more oil and gas production. This isn't real. The first thing that shocked me about that story, Robert, I didn't know they were. I mean, it's great, but I didn't know they were allowed to do it. I thought there was some rule on that from Ed Miliband.
Well, yes, you may have thought so, but Ed Miliband may be being sidelined. I know we're going to come on to airport expansion in a minute or two. Apparently there has been, yes, a 20% rise. That's what this £7.8 billion in oil and gas production is worth, a 20% rise in BP's exploration compared with a 25% cut that was being proposed by the former CEO, a guy called Bernard Looney, which is perhaps...
Mr. Looney, you know, the man who'd never heard of deed poll. Yes, him.
Indeed. So perhaps Looney by name and nature. I don't know. I obviously don't know the guy. But what BP have said is we went too far. We thought that net zero was a good idea. We now realise circumstances have changed. We got blown along by all this net zero stuff, and we need to go back to the basics. We're an oil and gas company. That's what we're there for, and that's what we're going to look for. To me, sounds like common sense. Yeah,
it does sound like common sense. And another one here, Gatwick's airport expansion plans for a second runway face delays until October, awaiting further environmental reviews and responses. I mean, I find this one almost hilarious, bearing in mind that Ed Miliband has gone, no, you know, we have to change our life. You stop eating meat, travel. travel less, fly less, stick a heat pump in your 18th floor flat, God knows what else. But at the same time going, yeah, but I'm all right with a new runway. I mean, that seems extraordinary. You'd think he would have resigned, but he won't resign because he likes a limo and a red box and all the power that goes with it. But it is interesting that it's likely to, to happen. But there's still some environmental considerations, which is likely, Robert, to end up with somebody promising to plant some trees in Bromley or something.
Yeah, so there are problems with noise pollution. Well, you and I know a bit about that because we're on the flight path.
Yeah.
Certainly I am in Tunbridge Wells on the flight path to Gatwick. So there are concerns about that. But the main thing here is Labour getting real. It's only just over a year, or about a year, since Labour abandoned its green investment plan worth £28 billion. It realised that was just unaffordable. Now it gets into power. It's expanding Heathrow. It's looking into the third runway. It's looking into expanding Luton Airport. It's looking at now Gatwick as well. This is the Labour Party realising in government all those sort of student politics green credentials that they were burnishing a year or so ago. No, we have to get real. Otherwise, the economy is going to be going downhill very quickly.
Indeed. And again, that's Donald Trump's position on so much, isn't it? Look, whatever the considerations are of going forward, we've also got to deal with the now as well. And the now, we need to do this, this and this. And we're not going to take any daft lectures from fringe groups. And I sense this country, Robert, has listened to a lot of fringe groups on a lot of issues over the years. These are people that punch well above their weight. They're often people with the loudest voices. We see this with the sort of trans discussions as well, DEI and all of that. Loud voices do often work. And I think that's why we've ended up in this kind of Alice in Wonderland world.
Well, I couldn't agree more with that. Those on the sort of woke progressive side of politics, if you look at certain figures, they're about 15% of the population. But judging by their voices, you'd think they were more like 65%. And yes, it's time for the rest of us to assert what we really believe as well. And it's great to see this Labour government. I don't support generally, but this Labour government this week beginning to do one or two good things.
And a final one here, Mike Ainsbury. He's the former Labour MP. He was jailed for 10 weeks this week for thumping a constituent. This is a violent man, clearly, an out-of-control man. Can't keep his fists to himself. Not a nice piece of work. But he's appealed the prison sentence. It's now been suspended. So he's not, I think therefore he's gone to jail for 2 or 3 days. And he's now back out again because they've suspended the sentence after an appeal, which I'm frankly staggered about, because you can go to jail for a long time for writing the wrong thing on Twitter. But if you punch somebody's living daylights out of them, you get 10 weeks to start with, which I thought was ridiculous. And then you appeal and get nothing.
Yeah, it's the two-tier standards here, isn't it? And it's less about this 10-week sentence. OK, I think I can agree with you, should have been more. But what really matters here is people going to prison for 2 years for an offensive tweet. That's the one that's out of all proportion. The Mike Ainsbury one, well, 10 weeks in prison is going to be pretty nasty for him, I can tell you. So I don't mind so much about that. The tweet one, I very much do mind about.
There it is. Thank you.